you were around through what I consider a pretty big genesis in pro wrestling, because around the beginning of the 1990s, you would have occasional new gimmick match types. And I know you have said you're not a big fan of the gimmick match types. And we've seen some of them that made it through. Are there any that you remember that didn't make it through? Because, I mean, I'm sure that you were like, I ain't doing that, with some of the stuff that was pitched your way.
No, because I basically tried everything that was pitched my way. I had an attitude, and I still do to this day. Now I've developed my own filter over the years, obviously my own philosophy, I think, really more than a filter. But back then, you got to keep in mind, Sean, I was learning on the job.
Yeah.
Right. I got into the wrestling business in 1987. I learned about, television advertising and syndication and all of that. And I learned about production, and I learned about live event promotion, and I learned about how to be a talent on camera. So I learned a lot about the business of the wrestling business prior to coming to WCW. And when I was in WCW as an announcer, having left AWA, I was a talent. I wasn't involved in creative. I wasn't involved in it in AWA. I wasn't involved with it in WCW until about 95, when Nitro came along, and I said, okay, I've got to put my fingers in the water here, or put my toes in the water. I've got to get involved in this. I tried to stay away from it because I had no confidence in my own abilities. I had no feel for it. I had no desire to get involved in it. But when it was, Nitro, and it became my vision for what Nitro was going to come about to be, I had to get involved because nobody else could see my vision as clearly as I could at that time. But when I finally made the decision to jump in and get involved, I was learning every single day. I had never sat in a booking meeting. I wasn't an intern. I wasn't a writer's assistant. I hadn't been exposed to any creative conversations, really, other than the ones where people talk about shit that happened 20 years ago. I got a lot of that. But in terms of day to day, what are we going to do next week on TV? I hadn't been a part of any of that dialogue until the day I kind of thrust myself into the middle of it. And every day I was learning on the job. Sometimes I learned a lot. Sometimes I learned what not to do. Sometimes I learned what to do. But my approach, once I really immersed myself into the creative process, is to realize that just because I don't like something doesn't mean the audience won't. There's a lot of things that I hate seeing in wrestling that the audience responds to. Okay, who's right, who's wrong? They're right. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's wrong. So once I realized that, it was like, okay, I don't like this idea, but I'm going to go with it, and we're going to see what happens. Now, that's a bad way to approach the business, because there still should be some level of analysis that goes into it. What's the story? Where's the anticipation? Is there enough reality in this story to make me go, I'll buy into that? Are there any surprises that are going to throw the audience off kilter once they think they know for sure where it's going to go? Something happens that makes them realize they don't. Simple tool, right? Television drama, see it all the time. Is there sufficient action, and can we convey that action? If I would have asked some of those questions, we would not have seen World War III, for example. Okay. So I did plenty of things that I took a flyer on that I ultimately wished I wouldn't have, because now I got to get my ass kicked when people ask me about them. But
it's good content, though. It's really good content. You're doing great with it.
Content. It's great content. There's a reason for people to still hear me talk, because they like to kick my ass.
Have you ever seen the Joe Dirt classic, or the David Spade classic, Joe Dirt?
No, I haven't.
There's a spot where he approaches this man selling fireworks on the side of the road, sparsely attended. And I use the term snakes and sparklers a lot with my staff, because Joe Dirt goes up to this guy selling fireworks, and he was like, why do you just have snakes and sparklers? And the guy goes, oh, those are the only kinds I like. And he was like, it's not about you. And he said, you need some whistling bungholes here, some whisker do's, some whisker don'ts. He's like, you need all these fireworks to get the consumer here. So I think that's a pretty good lesson to learn.